having said this, I don't think that it's gonna software developers and engineers are gonna be completely replaced. 100 years ago, we were punching hole cards, and that was a skill. We're not doing that anymore, so we're always gonna be developing as developers. We're able to work on more things in parallel, but our brains are, still the same brain as it was before AI. So,
and to be honest, I think the bottleneck in actual software developing was rarely the coding itself. Welcome everybody to today's podcast episode. We do have a very special guest over here. We have Robin from Spotify, and welcome that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk about a lot of topics, especially about how large-scale projects work, how you as a senior developer work at Spotify with AI and many, many other tools. And probably one question you have heard pretty often is, how is it like compared in such a large-scale project back then, a year or two ago, and now with AI and with the changes, how's life as a developer nowadays?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We do have an enormous code base spread out over a large number of teams. So each team owns from maybe 5 to 15 components typically that we have to know very well and be comfortable with. So going from the state where we were before AI to working in a large ecosystem like that with AI, I would say that it's probably easier now, or it is definitely easier now because the AI has a broader context or a bigger, like an understanding of a larger share of the code than I as a single human developer can have. So it's definitely easier that way. I can ask questions and get immediate answers about like a broad spectrum of the code base. But as we all know, it can sometimes throw us into dark holes and claim things that are not really true. So everything needs to be verified also. But it's a good way of learning about the code also. It makes it easier to like traverse all the massive code that we have and know where to make like a surgical insertion or change.
I think especially when it comes to such a massive code base, I mean, many people with, let's say 20, 50, 100K lines of code say this is big, but like Spotify is really, really big. But wouldn't you say, especially with AI, when people like more generate code and everything, that they actually don't really know the code base? Like, do you think developers have to know their code base when they use AI? How will this change, or maybe how will this affect like the code quality or so?
Yeah, really good and interesting questions. Especially like, do developers need to know their code base on a detailed level?
That's right.
Like, I want to say yes. Like today in, what's today, April 2026, I want to say yes, but I think that we are going slowly, but somewhat surely into another world where we don't necessarily have to know it. The same way, this is a crude comparison, but maybe the same way that we don't really know the compiled code, or we don't know it at all. We just trust that the compiler compiles our code. And at some point, I imagine that we might end up in the same situation with AI. Not exactly like a one-to-one copy of that situation, but something similar where we don't necessarily have to know all the details of the code base. But I think that it's absolutely crucial for us to not just blindly go into this world of being like, the AI made the change that I described and I'm going to lean back and be fine with that.
Yeah, I think I hear it from many developers that they say, I don't care what the AI generates. I'd maybe just check it and then deploy it. And I have unit tests and maybe an AI harness or whatsoever. Many people say code quality will go down by many levels. And I think this is an interesting time because like when we worked together, I knew that Spotify said like, we have code quality, we have this, we have that. And now people say, I don't care about the code quality. And this is like the next level of code generation, the way how you code. But what would you say, like, how did your daily schedule or daily doing as a developer change, for example?
Well, I definitely work faster these days. Like I can work on more tasks in parallel and work on more tasks over the same amount of time. So let's say something that would have taken me 2 to 3 weeks of researching, implementation, testing, and deploying, that might be a few days now. And I am able to do more complex tasks, or rather, I'm able to work in domains that I'm not 100% familiar with, where it would have taken me a lot longer before AI, where now I can have the AI propose code for me, and I can verify that with colleagues that may know that domain better than I do, and I can verify it with another AI, for instance, and test out the code. So I'm definitely moving faster now than I did before. But it's also a bit of a higher, like more things to keep in my head at the same time. So mentally, it's a little bit more of a challenge because we're able to work on more things in parallel, but our brains are, still the same brain as it was before AI. So
yeah, I think this is quite a big change. I mean, I see many developers starting their agents for many different tasks, and usually as a normal developer back then, you would have focused on one task, being in a tunnel, do your thing. That's interesting. Would you say that it's kind of different for concentration or for the way that you use, I don't know, your mind and your memory for what to remember and whatnot? Or is it more like a fire and forget and whatever agents will deliver? How do you usually handle that?
Well, I try to not have too many tasks going at the same time, like maybe
Makes sense.
3 at the same time. And since this is specifically about AI, then I'm going to frame the response around that. Let's say that I'm working on 3 different things, and sometimes you need to check something with another developer, or you need a PR review or something. It's easy then to fire up another task while you're waiting for something that might take 30 minutes. Before AI, 30 minutes was not a lot, so I would break my concentration if I started on something else. But now it's so quick and easy and cheap to just fire a new question to an AI for the next task. Look at this JIRA ticket. This is the context. This is the discussion in Slack. This is the documentation from whatever. Please work on a plan. And it can do that while I'm waiting for a review, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. But I hear many developers saying that waiting for the AI, even though you fire different agents with different tasks, is like this breaking concentration. And I think also like the skill set, especially when it comes to soft skills, changes for developers. What would you say is like what are the new skills for developers to become more important? And what would you say becomes less important for developers?
I guess more important is knowing a broader context and understanding about a context, and also focusing less on actually typing out the code, like writing code. I feel like it's becoming less important now, and more important is knowing like good software engineering and architecture, and knowing how things tie together. Like the AI, sure, it does have a broad context, but sometimes I feel like it can have a narrow context also, solving a problem that is an excellent solution for this narrow context. But I know from experience that we tried this 3 months ago and it crashed in production or something like that. So sometimes we have a bigger context outside of just the code repos that the AI can access, or whatever context the AI is working in.
Yeah, I think it's quite important, as you mentioned, like architecture. And I think there's a difference between just a normal programmer and a software engineer that cares about engineering, design pattern, and architecture, and many, many more things. But would you, for example, say that architecture itself is something that a developer needs to be good at? Because usually an AI can also check the architecture, set up an architecture, knows all the best practices. What would you say is like part of the AI, what's part of a developer, and what will or can change in the future?
Yeah, I feel like as a human developer, I'm being pushed further and further into a corner here.
Yeah.
So I would probably say, again, context, like whatever number of years a given developer has in their experience bag, is definitely something worthwhile. And knowing the history of the code base and knowing the user patterns, for instance, knowing what has worked before and what has not worked, knowing why things are built the way they are built also. But the interesting part about all of this is that these are not intrinsically impossible for an AI to have as a context either. Like we can save ADRs in the code base. We can then let the AI access our metrics to see user data. It can access user interviews also from our documentation. So I think that we are moving into a space where human developers are becoming less and less crucial.
I think that's also a part that we want to address in this podcast. Many developers say they don't know how AI will evolve if they become obsolete as developers. I think 2 years ago, if you were a software developer, a pretty good one, you have like a big career, big salary, and now everything's on a little bit on hold. Where would you say are developers in, I don't know, 1, 2, maybe 5 years? What can the future maybe look like? And yeah,
that's the $1 million question that everyone in the world is asking right now, and no one really knows. Maybe some people have a better hunch, like the people that are actually developing these AI models. I mean, they have bold claims about the future for software engineering.
Yeah.
And they are also salesmen, so it's hard to know exactly where their predictions land.
That's right.
But given what we have seen, like you said, in the past 2 years, the landscape has changed drastically. So I wouldn't be surprised if it keeps going in the same direction, marginalizing human developers more and more.
Yeah.
But having said this, I don't think that that software developers and engineers are going to be completely replaced. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be one CEO and a bunch of AIs just saying, build the product and make it nice. I think that somewhere in between, we want a human in the loop, and probably that we need a human in the loop. And I wish I could tell you exactly why and how, but I think that's going to show with time.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, I also think about like what the ratio will be. Especially at Spotify, we had like huge teams, and many developers are friends of smaller teams. And if a developer will be AI enabled and becomes like 2 to 3 times faster, more productive, whatever, you can probably have smaller teams with the same output. So whatever that means. But I think it's really a good question to say, is there enough software to develop and enough code to write, to generate whatever? Do we have many more teams, many more individual softwares? Do we have like bigger apps with smaller teams and so on? I think this is really interesting to see where this will develop. Would you say, for example, also like a Spotify, I think many companies had big layoffs, like, do they staff down to smaller teams, more productive teams? Do you think this will come back and they will grow later on? Would you say that you don't need such big software teams anymore in the future, or can maybe develop many more products? What would you say is like the direction the market's going?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what direction the market is going, but I know that, there are 2 ways of seeing this. You could scale down your human developer teams and save money and still be as productive as before, roughly. Or you could keep your human development team as is and have that cost still, and then be, 10 times or 100 times as productive. And I guess that's up to each company to decide where they want to go. But also, if one company, competitor A says, no, we're going to keep everyone and be 10 times more productive, then it's hard for competitor B to say, oh, we're going to scale down and save money.
That's right. Yeah. Would you say that there are like pitfalls when it comes to developing with AI, that many developers, don't know about some pitfalls, something that you have experienced?
Well, absolutely. So one pitfall, obviously, is trusting it too much and becoming kind of lazy in a sense, where it's so easy to get the right answer, and you want it to be the right answer because that will make your job so much easier. So it's easy to trust, almost hope that this is the right answer, like if you're given the right answer 9 times out of 10,
Yes.
then you're inclined to think that the 10th time is also going to be the right answer, but you don't know which time that is. So it's hard to know exactly when there's a discrete little thing that is actually completely wrong and will ruin something.
Yeah.
So I think that it lowers the guard for developers. And I think that errors can sneak in from that.
Der Podcast gefällt dir und du willst mehr erreichen? Mehr Freiheit, Marktwert und Verdienst als Entwickler oder Freelancer? Genau darum geht's in meinem Buch Code to Cashflow. 250 Seiten aus 20 Jahren und 200 Projekten Erfahrung. Das Ding macht mehr Rendite als dein ETF-Portfolio. Jetzt auf Amazon, Link in der Beschreibung. Lohnt sich. I think this is also not only for software developers, for many people that use AI, if it's right 9 out of 10 times, you really need to be competent enough to spot this one time. How would you usually tackle this in daily software development? Would you say you still need a senior developer that can spot this 1 out of 10? Or how would you make sure that you don't get any bugs, failures, or outages because of such things?
Yeah, good question. Like you say, I think having a senior developer looking over things, again, with a broader context and experience, I think that's a great way to combat that. If you have a small team or like you're a solo developer, I think that have another AI, maybe from another provider, review all your code or the code that the first AI wrote and give it the original context or not the original context, but the original description of the task.
Yeah.
Or try to give it a slightly different context and see if it reaches the same conclusion, and then have them review back and forth. Maybe have third AI also.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, when I do tasks besides coding, like copywriting, whatever, I usually start Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT for the same task and see what they deliver. But the problem is still I need to match those results and pick the right one. And especially when it comes to coding, let's say AI A says this is right and AI B says this is right. You can come up with AI C, but I think this is pretty hard, to be honest. I have not yet seen a very good mode for developers using AI and not being lazy, don't fall on those pitfalls, and have a good quality. Because as you mentioned, people may overlook something, may get lazy. Which also brings me to the next question. Would you say that AI makes developers lazy, that something slips through? What's your opinion on that?
I wouldn't say no. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for developers to develop some kind of laziness or fatigue or have too much trust in this usually excellent companion. So I think that's definitely a risk. Not only in having less performant code slip through, but also in losing your coding chops, basically. Let's say that you're a boxer and you were the greatest boxer in the world, and then you haven't done it in 10 years. You're not going to be the greatest boxer in the world anymore because you need to keep it up and, work out every single day to keep that up. And I think you need to exercise your brain also to know these things. And if the brain optimizes itself all the time. And if it realizes that it doesn't need this knowledge anymore, then maybe it optimizes that and puts that in a cold storage somewhere before it flushes it.
I think it's also hard for developers and junior developers now starting and learning to code with AI only, because if AI fucks up, you don't have someone actually fixing that. How would you say, is life as a junior developer now? What advice would you give to junior developers that now are starting out?
Oof, that's a tough one. 2 years ago, I would have said, my answer would have been completely different. I would have said, you should definitely do this. You should start with, I don't know, Python or JavaScript or something that's fun and easy. Now, I don't know. I would definitely say, we're going into an AI-driven world of development. So I would definitely say get up to speed on using AI, because that's what most companies that I've heard of are really asking for now. That as a developer, you need to be able to develop with AI. And I can miss the days when we were writing code by hand, but I'm also pragmatic. This is what we do now. So
Yeah.
I think that is really important as a junior developer. But I think it's also, maybe as a junior developer, you should study great examples of great architecture, great code, learn from the masters, whoever that may be, like John Carmack or whatever. Listen to him speaking about code development 20, 30 years ago, just to get a sense of how it used to be and what is important in like shaving milliseconds off of latencies and things like that.
Yeah.
It's easy to tell an AI, like, make it fast, but it's a pretty interesting topic to do a deep dive into, how to actually reduce latency.
That's right. Would you say that soft skills become more important? Or an example, if you would now have to hire a new junior developer or whatever, what would you be looking for? Like more soft skills, more personal, more specific types of skills, AI experience. What would you say? Like, this is like a good candidate that could join my team.
That's a good question. So what you're saying is that if the software engineering skills are not as important now as they were before, what else differentiates two different candidates? I would say, like, my response to this is the same response that I would give to like what I appreciate in people in general. And that's curiosity. Be curious about the world. Don't be content about the world. Like, be curious, try new things, look for different things, try things that you haven't done before. Don't be afraid to try something and fail. So curiosity.
That's a very good one. I think this really like differentiates, like, I don't know, normal developers and aspiring developers being curious about new technology. I remember some developers saying, I learned Java, I don't have to learn anymore. And I was like, if you're becoming a software developer, you have to learn all the time. Things change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, if you're curious, then you don't have to tell someone to learn something new, because they will already have been doing that for a while because they're curious about it and they think that it's fun and exciting.
Yeah, that's why.
So,
I also think like...
And also be curious and interested in other things outside of software development. Like if you're interested in, I don't know, art or in, forestry or bolts or diving or something, that brings something interesting to the team also and gives you different perspectives. So a broad interest and a broad curious mind.
Yeah. That reminds me on one story. I had an applicant, I think 10 years ago, and we were on a German DAX corporate, and they said, he had a break of 1 year where he wasn't on a job. And I was like, I'm curious what he did in that year. And he was traveling China and told me like the crazy stories. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, have interests, have hobbies, like have stories to tell. Because at the very end, we're all humans. We want to share experiences. And sure, it's important to be professional, have that professional experience. But I think at a certain level, everybody has that. I hope so. So this really makes a difference. That's right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think one of the last questions would be, would you say that AI is an actual threat, or what's your take on that for developers, for white-collar jobs?
Sorry, if AI is an actual threat to developers?
Yes. It's a tough one.
Yeah. In a sense, yeah. It's not necessarily a threat to developers, but it's a threat to the employment status for some of us. But as developers, we can all use AI to our benefit. But I think that I wouldn't be surprised if there are going to be some layoffs in the software industry as a result of AI. I could be completely wrong. I'm not an expert on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, I think there was a pretty big hype that everybody wants to become a programmer like 4 or 5 years ago, something. And it can't be that everybody develops software. I mean, except in the Silicon Valley, maybe. And I think this hype is now at a low, and people think about it and people say, let's do something with our hands that AI can't replace. And I also think the way you write or generate code changed, because to be honest, like I had a good time in my IDE developing code, auto-completion here, lambda da, chaining it, developing classes. And that's not the way you do it anymore. And this is like
I miss that.
a little part of my fun, of my passion that goes away. Yes, it's more productive, it's faster, whatever. Yeah, but it brings a downside. And I know, for example, when I wrote my book a year ago, I was like, yeah, AI is just a tool. We use it, that's about it. But to be honest, in that 12 months, so many things changed. And I told my publisher, we got to edit this passage. I need to change it. It didn't age well in 1 year.
Yeah.
Who knows what we are saying in a year or 2 or 5 or whatever. By the way, in the very first podcast, I had this one question, where do you see developers in 10 years? And he was like, also from SoundCloud, Thomas, I don't even know where we are in a year or so. Like, things are moving so fast nowadays, you can't really tell and you can't predict. And that's the reality.
Yeah. No, it is.
Yeah.
I miss, like what you said, I miss the little intricacies of coding as well.
Yeah.
But I look at it from a pragmatic view. Like, this is what it is today, and I try to follow and be at the top of my game in whatever year it happens to be.
Yeah.
100 years ago, we were punching hole cards, and that was a skill. We're not doing that anymore, so we're always going to be developing as developers.
Yeah, that's right. And to be honest, I think the bottleneck in actual software developing was rarely the coding itself. It was more about like getting things in the right specifications, having all those meetings, putting things together, having domain knowledge and whatnot. Do you maybe see any specific roles in the future to become more important? Like someone already told me, maybe requirements engineering, maybe, I don't know, like C-level ideas to requirements in the code, maybe like, I don't know, marketing for software, something like this. Do you see some roles that become probably more important?
I think you touched on a really important thing there. I think marketing is still something that is difficult. Like, as a solo developer, you can develop, you have an idea for an app, and you can have that in the App Store within a week now. But the problem of marketing is still not solved. It is still exactly the same as before. Sure, you can have the AI make, videos for you and things like that. But I think that as humans, we want something that is real. We don't necessarily want what, at least today, can be spotted as a fake AI ad. So I think creative marketing, fun marketing by people that are down, on the floor, on the street with the users that the company is trying to target. I think that's still very important, having that cultural knowledge.
That's right. I think this really makes a difference. And what I also saw on LinkedIn, someone posted he built a clone of Slack in Lovable within a weekend. I was like, yeah, you know what? Nobody needs Slack anymore. And I was like, Slack is just like a messenger. I mean, we had MIRC back then, so that's no rocket science. And I mean, as much as I love the Spotify app, it's a cool music player, that's not rocket science. But the science is like the whole community, like the whole playlist, the whole backend, like all those scales, having this scalable, secure user base, like this is the magic behind that, I guess.
Yeah. And also, Spotify is a very large technical implementation that, sure, it can be repeated, but it's battle tested and it's very broad. But beyond that, there's also endless hours of negotiating with record companies all over the world in all different countries. So sure, you can build a Spotify clone or a Slack clone or something like that, but there's so much other invisible work that we don't see when we use these apps that happen in the background, and it just works.
Yeah.
But it didn't just happen out of sheer magic.
Yeah. What would you say is like the most complex feature or task that you ever had to work on at Spotify?
Oh, well, I'm currently working on playlist and playlist infrastructure. So parts of that infrastructure is very complex and we don't really think about it. But like one problem is, let's say that you have a collaborative playlist, for instance. You can have any number of users making modifications to the same playlist all over the world, across the world.
Yeah.
And they are technically, their changes are being the requests for those changes are being sent to different servers around the world and different databases also, because we have a database that spans around the world, but it's served by different nodes. So bringing all of that together in a seamless manner and having that be quick and fast and low latency is super complex, but it's transparent to users. So that's one cool and complex little piece of software to work on.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think every developer knows you can't just say, hey, Claude, make this more performant, more robust, or hey, Claude, fix this code. This doesn't really work. But I think everybody that touched something like this knows the scale and the problems and the synchronizations about that. That's a pretty good one. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Robin, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Thank you for the insights and thanks for the good time.